Alright, we're going to walk through the steps to completing the first assessment in Power Engineering Simulation Winter 2019. What our goal is going to be is to eventually get our boiler up and running, which will mean we need water and we need our first firing. In order to do that, we're going to need to make sure we have a few auxiliary systems running, which will include our air compression system and our diesel generators. Okay, so let's begin. Step one is going to be to get our air compressors running. Our air compressors are going to also require some cooling water supplied from our sea chest using an auxiliary pump, supplying to our air compressor, and then eventually making its way overboard. Inside the air compression system, that pathway for water feeds air cooler number 1, number 2, and my service air cooler. And I can confirm that I do have water flowing through that system. Once I have that set up, I can create my pathway for air through to diesel generator 1, and I could turn on my start air compressor number 1. Start air compressor number 1 will eventually fill up my start air 1 tank. So at this point where I have cooling water and my pathways created, I would be okay to turn on my compressor control. So I'll turn them into auto. And I'm going to repeat similar process with start air compressor 2. So make sure we have a pathway. We'll continue to fill up start air 1 using this guy, and as well my service air compressor. Turning him on, and once again switching these guys over to auto. With air pressure building, I can start to work at my diesel generator 1. Coming to this page, I can see right now I have a couple of alarms. So I have a low pressure on my air system, but I know that's filling, so that should be okay. I notice I have a low alarm on my lube oil, so I could add some lube oil to clear that alarm. Looks like my alarm just cleared, and I would make sure that I turn off my lube oil supply valve. I need to set up a few systems. First one I'll look at is my lube oil system. So I'll use a pump to drive lube oil through to my engine. I'll open up one of my lube oil filters and I'll turn on my pump, and I can put them into auto operation. I've got my cooling water, so I have an seawater inlet and a seawater outlet valve. I also have a freshwater cooling loop, and I could set my temperature controller into auto for that loop. Check my expansion tank level. It looks okay. I could add water if it was low. On the fuel side, I'm going to go to my starting point for fuel on page number 3. My diesel oil service tank. I have a pathway to go to my diesel generator 1. I have a supply valve and a filter 1 valve. As long as your pressure is above 15 bar, then we are okay at this point to start our diesel generator number 1. I'm going to start him. He appears to be started, so my speed is stabilized around 1200 RPM. I'm going to just double check a couple things before I move on. One, I do have flow of cooling water. I also have flow of cooling water into my engine, and my fuel looks like it's flowing, which means that I think all of my systems are functioning correctly. My lube oil tank level is constant, so if it's going up or down, then it's likely that you are either losing oil to the sludge tank or you have forgotten to close off your supply valve. Once it's running, I'm going to connect the breaker, so we'll go to page 70. And on page 70, I'm going to connect in my breaker for my diesel generator 1. I want to make sure that it is yellow, so I don't want to connect in a generator that is black and not running. And when I do this, what I'm doing is now producing electricity for my plant from my diesel generator. I could double check on page 74, and my diesel generator is now supplying electricity to almost all components aboard my ship. Let's take a look at the boiler. First step is to go to the page 80, and I want to make sure that I have water in my boiler. Right now it's low. I'm going to manually set my level controller to 50% open for this valve position, and I'll turn on one of my feed water pumps. Pressure and flow is building out of the pump, and that's resulting in my level starting to increase. When I get to about -100 is probably a reasonable spot for me to turn off my pump, so that any water that continues to pour in is not going to overshoot my level. So about there, I'm going to turn off my pump, and we can see that my level is still increasing but slowing down, and I should probably stabilize around 0. I'm going to double check, make sure my vent is open. We'll need that during the startup. And I'm going to continue on to page 83, my boiler combustion page. So from the fuel side, I'm going to start at my diesel oil tank, follow my pathway to the boiler. I've got a valve here to open up. Make sure that my valves are aligned. I got to make a change here to align to diesel oil, and return to the diesel oil tank. Turn on my fuel oil supply pump, and double check that my pressure controller is in manual at a low firing rate, somewhere 0 to 10%. If everything is good, and I don't have any trips showing, I can start my burner. Burner is going to go through a purge process. I get an alarm showing just as my boiler control systems have now started up, so it's just realized the pressure's low. My pilot flame starts, and then my main flame becomes established. I'm going to come and look for certain milestones to have been met. One of them is that you have your flame on running off of diesel oil in manual at low firing. That you have your water level stabilized somewhere in the plus or minus 50 range. That your air compression system is set up, so we have pressure in our tanks and our compressors have been set to automatic operation. You have cooling water that's being supplied to all of the compressors. And you have a diesel generator 1 that is running and breaker connected. And if you do all those things, then you will be successful in showing that you have learned what you need to learn for our first portion of the course. Okay, good luck.